Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Today we travel back more than a century to a summer in 1907. This is not only a story, it is a lesson about strength. It is about a woman who lived her life without a single laugh, not because she was cold, but because she chose to be unshakable. She taught the world that control can be power, and silence can speak louder than words. Her name was Susan Kelly, known to the world as Sober Sue. Susan Kelly was born on a warm June morning in 1889 in a small wooden house near the Hudson River. Her father worked at the docks, carrying heavy crates from sunrise to sunset. Her mother took care of Susan and her two younger brothers. Life was not easy. Money was always short. The winters were cold, and the family often went to bed hungry even as a baby. Susan was different. Other babies smiled when their mothers sang to them. They laughed when their fathers made funny faces. But Susan's small face stayed still. Her eyes watched everything around her, wide and calm, but her lips never curled upward. When she was 4 years old, her mother said, "Susan, why don't you ever laugh?" Susan looked at her and said softly, "I like to watch. I don't need to laugh to enjoy." At school, other children teased her. They would tell jokes, pull silly faces, and wait for her to giggle. She never did. Some thought she was shy, others thought she was strange. But Susan didn't mind. She read her books, did her work, and walked home with her head held high. Her teacher, Mrs. Green, once asked her, "Don't you ever want to laugh like the others?" Susan answered, "No, ma'am. I think laughter is like gold. If you give it away too easily, it loses its shine." By the time Susan was a teenager, she had learned to use her still face as a shield. When people were unkind, she did not react. When they tried to upset her, she stayed calm. It was not that she had no feelings. Susan felt joy, sadness, and pride like anyone else, but she had learned the power of keeping them hidden at 16. Susan's father lost his job at the docks. The family needed money, and Susan began working in a sewing factory. The air was hot and dusty, and the work was long. The other girls told jokes and sang songs as they sewed. Susan worked silently, her hands moving fast, her mind far away. One day, during her lunch break, a man walked into the factory. He was tall, wore a fine suit, and carried a small notebook. He watched Susan as she worked, her face calm and unreadable. He came closer and said, "Young lady, do you always look so serious?" "Yes," Susan replied simply. The man smiled. "Interesting. I might have a job for you if you're not afraid to be on stage." That man was a theater scout, and his offer would change Susan's life forever. The theater scout's name was Mr. Howard Lane. He had been looking for unusual performers for Hammerstein's Roof Garden, a famous showplace in New York City. The Roof Garden was known for its bright lights, live music, and strange acts that made the audience cheer or laugh. Mr. Lane explained, "We have singers, dancers, magicians, even men who can juggle burning swords. But we don't have anyone like you. You have the most serious face I've ever seen. I think people would pay to try to make you laugh." Susan frowned slightly. Why would anyone want that? Mr. Lane leaned closer. "Because people love a challenge. If they think they can make you laugh and win a prize, they will try. And while they try, the audience will laugh and the theater will be full. You will be paid well. You could help your family." Money was something Susan's family desperately needed. Her father had not found work again, and her mother was sewing clothes at home to make ends meet. Susan thought about her brothers, who often went to bed hungry. She thought about her mother's tired hands and her father's sad eyes. When do I start? She asked. A week later, Susan Kelly stood behind the stage curtain at Hammerstein's roof garden. It was the summer of 1907, and the theater was packed. The warm night air carried the scent of popcorn and cigar smoke. The audience buzzed with excitement. Mr. Lane stepped out on stage and announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we present a woman like no other. She never laughs. She never even smiles. If you can make her laugh, you will win $100. The crowd roared. Susan walked onto the stage slowly, her face calm and still. She wore a simple blue dress and her dark hair was neatly tied back. She stood in the center, looking out at the sea of faces one by one. The performers came forward. A clown fell over his own shoes. A comedian told his funniest jokes. A man made silly animal noises. The audience laughed until tears rolled down their cheeks, but Susan did not even blink. Minutes turned into hours still. Susan's lips stayed closed. The prize money remained unclaimed night after night. The same thing happened. Word began to spread across New York. "Come see the woman who never laughs." Posters said. People lined up outside the theater. Some came to watch the show. Some came to try their luck at breaking her stone face. But no one succeeded. What the audience didn't know was that Susan's act was more than a trick. She truly never laughed, not on stage, not off stage. Her stillness was not an act. She turned on and off. It was who she was. And this made her even more fascinating to the crowds. Some newspapers wrote about her. One headline read, "The woman with a face of marble." Another said, $100 awaits the joke that can break her. And so, in the heart of New York City, under the bright summer lights, Susan Kelly became famous offstage. Susan lived a quiet life. She rented a small room above a bakery on the Lower East Side. Every morning, she would walk to the market, buy bread and milk, and then take a streetcar to the theater. She never wore flashy clothes. She never spoke more than she needed to. Some of the other performers tried to befriend her. "Come with us, Susan," they would say. "We're going to the music hall after the show. There will be singing and dancing." But Susan would shake her head. "Thank you, I'm going home." Many wondered why she kept so much to herself. Some thought she was lonely. Others thought she was simply shy. The truth was deeper. When Susan was a little girl, she had learned that life could be cruel. Her family had lost their home once when she was only 8. She had seen her father cry when he thought no one was watching. She had seen neighbors lose loved ones to sickness and accidents. She had decided very young that the best way to survive was to keep her feelings inside. If she never laughed, no one could take her joy away. If she never cried, no one could see her weakness, and so her stillness became her armor on stage. It was her power. Off stage, it was her protection. But fame came with its own challenges. Some nights, people shouted unkind words from the audience, trying to upset her. Some wrote letters accusing her of being cold-hearted. Others offered her money in secret if she would laugh just once for them. She refused them all. Her rule was simple: I do not laugh for anyone. Despite her calm, there were moments of kindness in her life. She often sent money to her parents and brothers. She paid for her youngest brother's schooling so he could become a teacher. She even helped the bakery owner downstairs when his wife fell ill. bringing bread to their customers in the early mornings before her own work one winter night. A young comedian named Charlie stayed behind after the show. He had been trying for weeks to make her laugh on stage and had failed every time this night. He sat beside her backstage. "Why won't you laugh?" he asked softly. "Don't you ever want to?" Susan looked at him for a long moment before answering. "Wanting is not the same as needing. People think laughter is happiness. But for me, strength is happiness, and my strength is in my silence." Charlie didn't understand, but he respected her answer. By the end of 1908, Susan Kelly was a known name in New York City. People from other states came to Hammerstein's roof garden just to see if they could win the $100. None did. The theater owner was happy. The newspapers kept printing her name, and Susan kept standing in the spotlight, still as stone yet, even as her fame grew. Susan knew it would not last forever. The world always looked for the next new thing, and when it found it, yesterday's star could fade quickly. By the summer of 1909, the name Susan Kelly was known far beyond New York City. Posters with her still, calm face were hung on street corners in Philadelphia, Boston, and Chicago. The prize money had been raised to $200, but still no one made her laugh. She became a legend. People told stories about her on trains and in cafes. Some claimed she had no emotions at all. Others swore she was secretly the happiest person alive and only kept her joy locked away. Children in the street would freeze their faces and say, "Look, I'm Susan Kelly," before bursting into giggles. In truth, Susan had mixed feelings about her fame. She was proud that she could support her family, but she also felt trapped. Every night she stood under the bright stage lights, facing the same challenge. The jokes changed, the faces changed, but her stillness never wavered. Some nights, when she walked home under the flickering street lamps, she would think, "Is this all I will ever be? A woman who does not laugh?" The turning point came one autumn evening in 1910. A new performer joined the show, a young woman named Lily Hart. With a sharp wit and a fearless attitude, Lily's act was a success from the very first night, and soon the newspapers began writing about her instead of Susan. One night after the show, Lily came to Susan's dressing room. "You know," she said, "people won't always pay to see a face that never changes. The world loves what's new. You should think about what comes next." Susan nodded politely, but the words stayed with her. For the first time, she began to imagine a life beyond the stage. In early 1911, the crowds began to thin. The Make Her Laugh Challenge was no longer the hottest show in the city. A new kind of entertainment, silent films, was drawing people away from live theaters. Hammerstein's roof garden still paid her well, but Susan could see the end coming. That spring, she received a letter from her youngest brother, Thomas. He wrote, "You've given us so much, Susan. You don't have to keep working for us anymore. Why don't you come home for a while?" For the first time in years, she thought about leaving the stage. Her last performance at Hammerstein's was in the summer of 1911. The theater was half full. A few old fans came to try one last time to win the prize money. As always, no one succeeded. When the show ended, Susan stepped off the stage without looking back. She returned to her hometown on the Hudson River. Life there was slower, quieter. She bought a small white house with a porch and a garden. She took long walks by the water and read books in the evenings. She still never laughed, but she felt peaceful. People in the town respected her. They would say, "That's Susan Kelly, the great. She never laughed once in her life." In the years that followed, Susan Kelly lived quietly. She no longer stood under stage lights or heard the roar of the crowd, but she did not miss it. Her days were filled with simple routines. She woke early, swept her porch, and drank tea while watching the river shine in the morning sun. She grew vegetables in her garden and gave them to neighbors. She wrote letters to her brothers, who had families of their own now. Sometimes children in town would dare each other. To try to make her laugh, they would pull faces or tell silly jokes. But Susan would only nod politely. In 1915, she began teaching sewing to young girls at the local church. She never spoke about her time in New York unless someone asked, and even then, she told the story without pride or regret, just as a simple fact of her life. When the United States entered the First World War in 1917, Susan quietly supported the town's soldiers by sewing uniforms and sending food packages. She never wanted her name mentioned in newspapers. She preferred to help without recognition. Her health began to weaken in the early 1920s. The doctors said her heart was growing tired. She accepted this news with the same calm she had shown her whole life. "Everything ends," she said once to a neighbor. "What matters is how you hold yourself until it does." On a cool spring morning in 1924, Susan Kelly passed away in her sleep. She was 54 years old. The news spread through the small town quickly, and then it reached the city she had once ruled. The old theater workers remembered her standing under the lights, still as stone, while the world tried to break her. Old newspaper clippings were pulled from drawers. Her name returned to print one last time at her funeral. One of her former colleagues from Hammerstein's roof garden stood and said, "Susan Kelly was not great because she never laughed. She was great because she never bent in a world that tried to shake her." She stayed true to herself until her very last day, and that is her legacy here. Life may seem simple on the surface, a performer with a face that never changed, but hidden in that stillness was a lesson many never understood. Strength is not always loud. Power is not always in motion. Sometimes greatness lives in the ability to stand unshaken when the world pushes against you. Susan Kelly never laughed, not because she was cold, but because she chose her own terms for life. She decided what she would give and what she would keep, and she never let the crowd decide for her. Her reminder that you don't have to be like everyone else to make your mark. You don't have to follow the rules the world sets for you. You don't have to give away the pieces of yourself that you want to protect in your own life. People will try to change you. They will test you. They will tempt you. They will challenge you to give up what makes you unique. But if you can hold to your truth quietly, steadily, without fear, then you too will earn your own kind of greatness. Be like Susan Kelly the Great, not because she never laughed, but because she never broke.